My name is Gary Carsley and I'm going to introduce the Four Seasons. We were hoping for the three tops, but it just didn't happen. So, firstly, this is Ming, and then Shahmen, and Tamara, and Brad with 2 Ds in case you want to search online afterwards. Ming, this... firstly, thank you very much to all of you. And I'm here to host a conversation, and it will conclude by opening up, which is an odd expression in the context of the people on stage, to some questions. So Ming, does this, because you're well known for the restaging of works in which you play all of the parts yourself, so does this perhaps signal a new stage in your practice that is more collaboration-based?
Yes. I'm still trying to catch my breath. I don't normally dance on stage in front of the public. So this, in one sense, this live performance dance, using dance is a kind of like a new thing for my practice. But also collaborating with other performers, friends, queens, and also. The whole process wasn't about making a film or a video. It really was about doing a workshop and presenting a kind of diary, a diary of the whole kind of process and what we've come up.
Okay. You've referenced here 3 Australian films. So in that sense, the core of your practice, as it is a sort of satellite around cinema, this has not changed. So. I'll just reiterate what the 3 films were, so in case the audience is unaware. First was Walkabout, then Picnic at Hanging Rock, and finally Priscilla. So this is almost like a triptych. So in one sense, it returns as a new media-based practice. And if you look at the display in the gallery of the work, you have 3 screens. This is well established in religious art. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about your understanding of Australian cinema and perhaps touch upon the framework of Ozploitation.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say that the whole project came about gradually. I mean, I didn't know I was going to do this in the beginning. The beginning involved watching a lot of new Australian cinema. As well as Australian TV from the 70s, and looking at, yes, Ozploitation. But I think there are enough artists who are working with this already, and I was wondering what can I contribute to this dialogue, and so I kind of looked at myself. I'm a Singaporean-born artist of Chinese descent, based in Berlin, and coming to Australia to make this new work, and I decided for various reasons that I would use Australian references, but transpose it to Singapore and Australia's common neighbor, to Indonesia. Mm-hmm. And I went to Yogyakarta as part of the research, and I was really drawn to the kind of landscape, the mythical nature. With this kind of history, this history that's larger than, longer than any notions of what Singapore or Australia is, and I wanted to tap into that, and so gradually, I think the movies that emerged were the 3: Walkabout, Picnic at Hanging Rock, and Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, because the outback, the struggle of man versus nature, was kind of like key themes, and this is something that came to mind when I was in Yogyakarta. So I roped in some collaborators, and we did a 2-week workshop where we made wigs and costumes and somebody's grinder.
Wow.
We'll advertise later. But I lost 15 days of intense workshop. We were rehearsing. We were doing these dance moves that choreographed by Otniel, and it's a combination. He could probably tell you more about it, but it's a combination of classical Javanese dance, modern Indonesian pop dangdut, and a bit of contemporary hip hop. And also the music that you heard was, we found a band, street musicians who play every night in the main street in Malioboro in Jogja. And we just asked if they could do a rendition of I Will Survive. And they agreed to try, so they rehearsed a bit on their own, and a week later we met up, we went to a studio and we recorded it. And that's the soundtrack that you heard.
I think the mediation, particularly geographically, of Indonesia is a really interesting paradigm, and one that's relatively new, and also because, well, one of the tropes about Australian art and about Australian cinema is the central role played by landscape. Now, landscape, as we all know, is fixed to place. So landscape geographically is not mutable, and in that sense could really be analogous to those historical constructions of gender, which similarly are fixed. So you used a single landscape that filled in for multiple positions. Now, maybe you could perhaps just consider, with respect to both the mutability of landscape and the fluidity of gender, some things that might tease out the project a little bit.
Yes. Well, I can probably think of a few things that could throw some light on this. For starters, I went to some of these really old kind of historical sites in Jogja. And we went to some volcanic rock mountains, and I was struck how close it resembled Hanging Rock. So that kind of, oh, okay. And then we went to Sanggang. It's like the confluence of two rivers, which, according to Indonesian, Javanese belief, they assign genders to these two rivers. And where they meet, the confluence of the male river and female river, they are Elo and Brogo rivers. It's deemed to have some kind of sakti, some kind of power. Mm-hmm. Well, we managed to get permission to film there. I thought that was significant as a kind of like as a site too. But also, in a sense, these are also timeless kind of like places that you can't. It's from Jogja, but it's water, it's mountains. These are kind of like kind of universal kind of landscapes, which I, as a Singaporean growing up in a city, I never had this kind of thing in my backyard. You know, it is something that's it's quite a I would say quite a new exotic thing for me, even to be out shooting on location in such loaded landscapes.
Because, well, if I understand it correctly, the landscape of Yogyakarta at this particular site passes for three different landscapes located in the history of Australian cinema. Now, passing is a very important consideration both in the performance of gender and, of course, it's one of the strategies pursued by artists working in decolonial modes of practice. And if we reflect, and I presume you all know Ming's work fairly well, and you've looked at the piece in the gallery, and you've perhaps read the wall notes. The issue of authenticity, both with respect to Australia and to Singapore, which are perhaps ersatz cultures, and the citation of Indonesia as a site of authenticity, I think is a really interesting thing to also discuss, in that both Singapore and Australia are colonial construction. So is Indonesia, in the sense in which the Dutch forged a society there. But there is an authentic culture that they are able to draw upon, particularly with frameworks of renewal and innovation, where both Singapore and Australia struggle with respect to that.
Certainly.
So
yes.
Perhaps you could.
Well, one thing I was really impressed by was that we're talking about, I mean, Jogja is the cradle of Javanese society for such a long time. I mean, they had even Buddhist kingdoms, Hindu kingdoms before we have present-day Indonesia, and this is something I really wanted to kind of tap into. as regards passing, I'm a Singaporean. We just celebrated 50 years independence, but of course we're talking about modern day Singapore, founded by the British. We are part of kind of a larger regional history. I mean, we are part of a larger Javanese history too of the whole region. So this was another reason why another reason I was drawn to the place.
Now, I'm conscious of the time that we have, and also alert to the fact that many of you, I'm sure, have questions that you would like to ask. So, with respect to technically how we can organise the framing of questions, I think if you raise your hand, we can pass one of the microphones up. So, who has a question that they would like to pose to any of the people on stage? Surely you want to ask at the very least what happened in those 15 days. Did you have internet access?
Oh yeah, plenty of internet access. It's and also it was a really good experience because Yogyakarta also happens to be where a lot of artists are based, and so there's a very kind of lively, kind of urban, contemporary kind of energy. But they also have this really kind of older history, kind of mythical background. So that for me was totally refreshing.
Now, collaboration proceeds generally by several means. How much of this was improvisational?
You want to answer that?
100%. No, it was actually really great. It was like 15 days. We all lived in the same house. There was about 6 of us. It was in this little town, and all our neighbors were big families. There was a central courtyard in the house, and it was like a drag boot camp for 15 days. We had our makeup artists who hung out with us. We had our choreographer who hung out with us, all the local queer artists and gay artists who were around, who brought us dinner every now and then.
We had a presentation.
And then at the end of the whole 2 weeks, we organized a party called Trash Gender, which was like a queer performance alternative, all the words we could put into it, party.
Inspired by this lovely, beautiful person here.
Yeah, so Tamara helped us tap into the local drag community, and we got some drag queens to come and perform for us, and then we performed as well. And it was this new sort of thing for them where it was totally inclusive of transgender people, drag queens, lesbians, gays, and
from different countries.
And from different countries as well. And so it was this new alternative sort of thing that we sort of celebrated at the end of this project as well. So it was more than just this work. We got a lot from it, and great friendships as well with this crew.
And Otniel, how were they to teach to dance? You're amongst friends here.
I have a short time to teach. It's very difficult to me to transfer about my mind to all. Yeah, but I do my best, and I try to combine about the Javanese style and dandu style. After that, hip hop is a little bit. Yeah, you did.
Who was the hardest student?
Who is the one likely to go on to Dancing with the Stars?
Tamara.
Yes. And in that you didn't really have a script, I'm presuming.
No, we didn't. There was no words. There weren't words. It was really images. We were making tableaux vivants. Mm-hmm. We watched the film clips, of course, as a reference, but it was really improvised.
It was just feeling.
Yeah, and we did it. We did several takes. And maybe I should talk about this, but maybe you didn't know. It's hard to tell, but the 3 videos, there's a program. I worked with a programmer to make a random edit. It's in sequence, but it's totally random which clips is chosen to play and which stills are being chosen to play, and each time it's completely different. It's really very much like the kind of modern day media apps that they give you like a highlight of the week, and they, you know, it's I for this work, as a departure from my previous work, I didn't want to make a what do you call it, a fixed edit. It was really letting go of the control of that.
Actually, you've just raised something, because having watched the work in the gallery, is there some random element within how the repeat works?
Yes, totally. It's totally random. It's in what do you call it? It's chronological, but the program decides which clip to show, and whether it's between 5 to 10 seconds. The duration of each clip is also random. So it's always different. It's just never the same edit twice.
Brad, is this the first time that you've worked with visual artists?
Yes, actually. It was so much fun.
So we talk about the art ecology, and I'm just curious about what you might be able to tell people who do not work within the art ecology, what you learnt from engaging with artists. Visual art, those who work within the framework of visual art.
I mean, say what you do in Sydney with your shows and like, you know.
Okay, so I've been doing performing for a while now. I trained with Sydney Dance Company. I've been, my drag is really out there, and in the same community, in the kind of Newtown underground art scene, is where I met this lovely boy here. Girl? What difference does it make? And so...
The law in Australia, it makes quite a lot of difference at the moment. Are you able to take any of the things that you've learnt from working with this form of collaboration to the form of collaboration that you normally work within?
Yes, definitely. It's influenced me quite a lot. Just working with other people and kind of having fun, but at the same time, kind of to aim towards a bigger vision is pretty much what I want to do.
I ask this because we often talk about what art can take from life, but I think that in having watched this, particularly the live component, I think it's really interesting to reflect upon what life can learn from art, particularly with regard to the eschewing or the throwing off of stereotypes that are imposed upon us. And particularly one of those things is around the perfection of the body and its location in an ideal state. And I think that the use of normal-bodied individuals in this way is really, really exciting, and it sets a very, very positive social example for younger people wanting to develop practices, particularly practices that take into account the rise of user-maintained forums like YouTube and these things. So perhaps, Ming, you might want to just, in closing, because we will have to finish, you could perhaps address the correspondence between your practice and some newer forms of, or particularly new forms like the YouTube.
What do you mean imperfect? I mean, that's why we're on YouTube. That's why we're doing this. Because we're perfect. Or at least we aim to be. Because we fail, we fall short, of course. But that's always been part of the practice, or in my experience anyway. It's really about the gaps of becoming and But I would say this. This is actually I decided that for APT this was a kind of celebration, and I consciously cast us. We kind of come from different cultural backgrounds and also geographically different nationalities together, and It's the work is the references are Australian, so for those who know it, but like we showed it in Indonesia, and it's very much also Indonesian. I think it's Singaporean. It's actually all of it or none of that. It's just I think it's celebrating the possibilities of the in between of how things can be read in different ways.
Yes. Just to get the microphone to you.
The performance was based on 3 films, Walkabout, Priscilla, Picnic at Hanging Rock and Priscilla. Now, to enable you to do Priscilla, the one before was Picnic at Hanging Rock. You're obviously 4 survivors from Picnic at Hanging Rock. What happened to the other girls?
Well, actually, this is the kind of sequel. You know, what happened to them, right? So really, they got like first of all they woke up and they were attracted by the Sakti, the mythical power of the mountain, and they entered this kind of space-time warp, where they emerged as nymphs, kind of semi-spiritual, like bodhisattva-like creatures, and they emerge out of the confluence of the Elo-Brogo rivers, of the male and female rivers, emerging as these kind of water spirits. And then again, they went through another transformation after bathing in the waters. They emerge as these bird-like creatures, these over-decorated queens. Who conquer the mountain and do a dance of blessing to all the beings of the land.